All right. So today we are going to take a look at making some quilt squares. And before we do, I want to take a look at a couple of ideas behind quilt squares. And the first being, the tradition of this is like a family heirloom type thing. My grandparents used to make it. My grandmother and great grandmother used to make quilts, and there was a tradition that we would hand down from generation to generation. If you are making yours out of traditional materials, you're probably watching the other video that where I'm making mine out of fabric, t-shirts, sweatshirts, and that sort of thing. But I also want to look at how we can do one um, uh, in Chrome Canvas or one of these digital applications, so that you all and you can choose whatever you like to do yours in. But we want to take a look at sort of the meaning of quilts. Why do people make quilts? And how they've been used historically. And just real quick before we start drawing, and you can go and get your drawing stuff together right now. It's a good time to get your supplies together. Um, get that other split window open. Get your Chrome Canvas going if you're going to use that. And one of the ways that quilts were used historically, and this is what this page refers to that we're taking a look at, is when during the time of slavery, when slaves were looking to get to the north, um, there were people along what they called the Underground Railroad. This idea that there were groups of people or individuals that were going to help slaves escape and get to the north where they to safety. And one of the ways they would provide the help and assistance was through the use of messages sent through quilt squares or through quilts that could be laid out over the front porch as if they were being cleaned or dried and, after they've been cleaned. And they could communicate some type of message to a slave who may be on the run. And so, one of the points being that very often quilts had a very much deeper meaning than just being something pretty to look at. When we look at some of these examples here on the top left, it's got this what they call the tumbling block, indicated as a symbol indicating that it was time for slaves to pack up and go. That a conductor was in the area. To the right of that, we see the flying geese. This was a guide to find water and food and places to rest. The North Star was a directional traffic to help find the Big Dipper in the constellation and use that as a guide north. Bear's paw actually encouraged them to find the path that a bear would take to look for food and water. Wagon wheel encouraged them you're going to need to travel by wagon through this area. What they call the drunkard's path meant you need to take a curved, zigzaggy path to escape the searchers looking around that area. Broken dishes was a symbol referring to a signal involved broken crockery at some future landmark. Um, Bow tie meant they should change clothes, get into a disguise, put on the clothes of someone wealthy. Monkey wrench was a signal to gather all the tools required for the fleeing of slave's journey. The sailboat signaled that either a body of water was nearby or that boats were available. Crossroads indicated that there was a referring to Cleveland, Ohio, which was the main crossroads with the several routes to freedom. And then finally, breeches was a symbol indicating escaping slave needed to dress as a free person. And that's kind of similar back to that bow tie. And so, what we want to look at today is just how we can create a unique quilt square of our own. A couple of things we want to take in consideration is the design. How's it going to look, of course, and what kind of colors maybe we would use, and how those can bring some meaning into our quilt square as well. One of the commonalities that we see in almost all of these, well, in most all of these, with the exception of sailboat, is the idea of symmetry or a symmetrical balance, where if we divided these down the middle, essentially the pattern on the right side would be the same as it is on the left. Now, of course, the gray and the whites might be switched, but the design itself is still triangle and triangle and triangle and triangle. Same with these, same with these, same with these, same with this. All of these are pretty symmetrical. We can make an argument that one may have a little asymmetry to it, which means not symmetrically balanced. Asymmetry means there's a little different on each side. And again, really the only one that applies to is the sailboat. So we want to look at how we can create a symmetrical design. And of course, today I'm going to be using my very favorite program, Chrome Canvas. And there's a couple of reasons I like to use this, and we've talked about this about 1,000 times. But I like it that it's just real simple and easy. Because I'm using Chrome Canvas and not an application like Sketchbook, Sketchpad, or any of those that have what we call the little straight line drawing tool, I'm doing all mine by hand. I am going to make use of the layers button because I'm going to put my color beneath my design layer. So I'm going to pick a layer on top, and I'm going to start thinking about, first of all, I want to draw a perfect square. Perfect's got to be exactly perfect. There's no such thing as perfect. Whoops, that's certainly not how it started. But I want to make it pretty good. That's a little thick. Let's turn that down. There we go. So I want to do my best at making a pretty good square. All right. And if you're doing this with pencil and paper and crayons, that's awesome too. You can do the same thing I'm doing here. You can do it by hand. I'm using my little eraser here to kind of get rid of these little tails I drew. And I've got a pretty good square. I'm pretty happy with that. Now, the design I've come up with, and I'll show you sort of, I've been playing around with sort of a design. You may not be able to see it very well, but it starts with a diagonal. And so I'm going to bring a line that goes from one corner to the other. Oh, that's pretty close. Go from this corner down to that far corner. Not bad. All right. And then mine does something sort of unique. It kind of, from about, it kind of crosses here in the middle. Now, if I were doing this with a square piece of paper, and I'll show you, if you're using a square piece of paper, you can do hamburger fold, open it up, do hamburger fold. Okay, I don't know why, but we call this grilled cheese fold because it went corner to corner and made like, I don't know why grilled cheese has to be triangle, but with the grilled cheese fold and grilled cheese fold. And so I did corner to corner, corner to corner, and then side to side and side to side, and you get a little plus in the middle, and you get the X that goes from corner to corner. And when I draw my line down this way, all right, that's what I have. All right, and again, yours doesn't have to be perfect. Mine obviously isn't even close to being perfect. All right. The other thing that mine does is I've kind of got lines that go from this box to here. So mine kind of does this. But again, what yours does is not going to be the same as mine. Oops, I don't like that line. See how I missed? So I'm going to use my undo button. There you go. That's not too bad. And then let's draw this one. All right. And then the final thing in my design is it does this. Oh, that's not right. So these points kind of come to, oops, I don't like that line. Sort of a point on that center line. That's pretty close to what I have. Okay. Now I'm going to consider how I want to use color. Now, I was thinking about this as a quilt design for my son who's getting married and my daughter-in-law to be. And so he's a UK fan and she is a Louisville Cardinals fan. So of course he likes red, blue, and she likes red. So here was the design I came up with, and I'm just going to kind of color this in. And so what I came up with is coloring this. Now, if you notice, I switched to the layer below. So if I kind of go over those black lines just a little bit, you don't even see it because the black lines are on top. I am using that layer button. So there's my first blue, and then I skip a little block and I do another blue. Can you guess what color I'm going to put in that blank? And again, if you're designing with crayons, that's my favorite medium in the world is crayons. I love crayons. First of all, when I was a kid, and to this very day, it's hard to get any type of art medium that has a better color selection than crayons. Crayons are awesome. And if you're doing this with crayons, you're probably having a lot of luck like I am, and you're kind of coming up with a cool design, and you got to choose your favorite colors. But if you don't have those materials, hey, use that chrome canvas. All right. So I've got the blue in there. And in my design, I then am going to choose, skip this block, so you can move it, and go directly to this block. And so then I'm going to come to this one. And I'm going to do it in blue. And I'm going to turn my size up just a little bit because I've moved into a larger area. And this will make it go a little quicker. And you can think about too, what would be the meaning of your quilt square? What would the purpose of it be? And so the way I think of this quilt square is where it's kind of uniting. Oops, this well, I'm sorry, like that. I like it. Louisville fan and this UK fan. I'm going to start thinking about it as the UK Louisville quilt that they can cover up with when they are watching those games and sitting on the couch in front of the TV, got their popcorn going, and they're yelling at each other over who's right and who's wrong, over who's got the better team. This will be the thing that unites them, that brings them together. So that's the meaning behind my quilt. What's yours going to be about? I had a student had a good idea for their quilt square the other day. We were talking about this project, and they said, "Hey, they know there's a lot of people who are sick in the hospital right now, and wouldn't it be cool if you could do like a quilt square that was like a heart?" That was their idea, and I thought, well, that's a really good one. But there's probably a lot of cool things you could do for somebody who is in the hospital and sick. You can make some cool designs. Hearts are cool, but maybe you can make a cool flower design. Maybe a butterfly design. Think about those things in nature that also happen to be symmetrical, or that automatically have sort of a symmetrical design. And you can think about how those would make someone's day a little brighter. All right. Quilt squares have also become real popular. If you drive out in the country now, you'll see that there are barns now that have big wooden quilt square designs. So recognizing that the quilt square just on its own is a work of art. There's a girl over in Winchester, I think she's about 14 or 15 years old, who makes a good living painting um, quilt squares. Now I think hers are roughly 2 feet by 2 feet or 30 inches by 30 inches. Pretty good size, but you can see them on barns sometimes as big as 8 feet by 8 feet. I don't know how much those would cost, but I guess a fortune. I'm also going to go with a custom red because I don't like their reds as much as I like this red. I'm going to go with this one. I think that's more of a Louisville red. If you're a Louisville Cardinals fan, you probably recognize that red and go, yeah, that's pretty close to what you're used to seeing. And while I'm a UK fan myself, I don't hold any grudge against you Louisville fans. It's all right. I always say it takes both kinds in this world. And in Kentucky, you got to be able to realize that we got two good teams, and that's not a bad thing. It is fun when they both make it into the NCAA tournaments or something real fun. And so, just going back to my design, as you can see here, I'm talking about a lot of nonsense while I draw, but I've got my red alternating into those spaces and my blue alternating so that when I'm done, I'm just going to do my big spaces first and I'll turn this down. You can see this is my quilt square. What's yours going to look like? And you all are going to do a screenshot or you're going to take a picture of it if you made them in real life, or you're going to save this as a JPEG or PNG when we get done. And then you are going to submit this for your assignment this week. This is what we're doing this week, making a quilt square. And if you remember, we talked about Faith Ringgold. And Faith Ringgold was an artist who used quilts to tell stories. And if you remember, her quilts not just had these cool design pieces, but hers would have images of people doing things and would tell stories through the pictures and images she would create. And if that is what you would like to do, well then, hey, guess what you get to do? If you would prefer to do a quilt square or a quilt where you do a design around the edges and you tell a story in the middle, that is sort of what I'm doing in the video lesson. Is we looked at telling a story with ours. So you can go either direction, any route, so long as you turn in a quilt or a quilt square, or a design you've been working on for your quilt square, you're good to go. And when we talk about this lesson in our unit, we'll take a look at also some of her paintings that she did that were narrative. Sorry, I got off track there. All right, so that's my quilt square. Hopefully you came up with something that you like, that you think is kind of cool. This is honestly one I would probably recreate in fabric and make use of. I kind of like that design. I do a lot of these for nonsensical reasons, and that's one of the better ones. So, in any event, I like it. I'm going to go over here and save it on my computer just so I can show you how you can save it on your computer. Save that image as. When we do, it's going to flatten that image. In other words, when it saves it, it's no longer going to be in layers when I save it on my computer. Now, having said that, it is also saved on the cloud. I'm going to save this. Let me click here. And I'm going to call this all right. And then so you can see here, if I close and just go back to this window and close out, it's saved there on the cloud. When I open it, my layers are still there. But when you save it to your computer, when you save it to your Google Drive, when you save it as a PNG or a JPEG, it's going to do what we call flatten that image. It's going to put it all on one layer. It's going to get rid of your separate layers. It's going to combine it all as one solid image. So just know that. But that's all you got to do for this week's assignment. I hope you had fun making quilt squares. See ya.